So here we go. The 2019 FXDR. No name for this bike, and I was actually wondering if they would actually come out with a name, like an official name, model name for the bike, but no, it's the FXDR. Wow. The sound on this exhaust, I mean, I know it looks different, but the sound also sounds really nice. Really deep, throaty sound. It's not like any other exhaust that I've heard. And I wondered if the function behind the exhaust would change with the look of it. Sometimes it just looks different, but no, definitely sounds different. It's got its own sound. The riding position here is very similar to when I rode the V-Rod last year. I wouldn't call it like a clamshell, but leaning forward, but you've also got the forward controls here. Woo! This bike pulls very torquey in comparison to the Fat Bob, which has the same engine, but for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because of this huge air intake here. Now, one of the parts guys at Yuba City Harley-Davidson, where we visited to check this bike out and do a little walk around, was telling us that the longer the tube here from the front of the air intake to the engine, the more velocity the air has to go into the bike, and that actually produces more power. So kind of a cool little tidbit of information there that he gave us. I was really appreciative of the guys out there at Yuba City Harley, and really appreciative of the guys here at Folsom Harley-Davidson allowing me to take this bike out today. So kind of a little bit of a learning curve here to get used to. Actually, we're just going to stay here. A little bit of a learning curve here, getting used to the riding position and the power. Now it's a very sporty feel as far as the power delivery, and a nice rumble here in the hands. Classic Harley feel when you're riding it here. This is where I'm turning right. Standard Harley controls though up here up front. You got the blinkers on the right and left, hazards, and your on and ignition on the right, and you got your brights, your trip toggle, and your horn on the left. That's pretty much it. The gauge that's up here is pretty much the same as you'll find on the Street Bob. And fairly easy to read. The little thing that was a little disappointing is that I know that you can check out your RPM here, but it doesn't tell you the speed that you're in, which is, I guess, not a huge deal. And we're getting all the greens here, so this ride might end up being a little bit shorter than it usually is, but that's okay. But really impressed with this bike. If I'm talking about long haul rides and having the bike for a passenger, this bike, obviously that little compartment in the back, you can put a passenger pad in there, but it's just going to be for a short ride. If you're looking for a bike to take your wife or your girlfriend or your kid out, you're not going to be very comfortable on it for very long. But that's not what this bike is about. This bike is about performance, and we're going to get on this on-ramp here. We're going to try and really lean it over. The salesman said that even though the tire has the rear tire is the same as the breakout, it doesn't want to lean back upright when you're leaning into a turn. So we'll see here. Oh yeah, no, that's really confident. It is a little weird having your feet up front here though. Oh my gosh, and this power, so easy. Yeah, we're in 6th gear here. Oh, so the gear is here up on the, and it's up there at all times. It looks like you've got the miles per hour here on the gauge and the gear, so that's not an issue. And you've got the gas gauge up here too. Got my blinker on still. Oh, well, that's because it's got to be an auto shut off. So we got the clip-on handlebars, which make you lean forward quite a bit, but it's not super uncomfortable. I could ride like this for a while. And again, I would want to take this bike out and get into some turns and some straightaways. This isn't a bike that you're going to take for touring, whereas the Fat Bob is going to be a much more comfortable bike, and that's really the bike that compares for the most part as far as specs go: ground clearance, lean angles, and the same 114 as you would have in the Fat Bob. But again, this air intake makes this bike feel way more sportier. Yeah, low end torque actually gives a lot more pull than up in the higher RPM, but still a really fun, solid ride. And we're gonna get on this off ramp here, and we're gonna get a little turn and get a feel of that as well. A completely different feel than the Fat Bob and the Breakout, which I would have compared this bike to. But like the salesman was saying there, this bike does not want to stand back up when you're leaning into these turns. Very comfortable, very confident. Like I said, it's a kind of a learning curve, because when you're leaning this far forward and you're getting this much power, it is a little bit intimidating as far as your feet being in front of you too. Kind of an awkward position. But if you've ridden a V-Rod, or really any other Harley cruiser that's got some power, and you like to get into the turns, you've got your feet forward. It's just a little bit different though, because you're leaning forward and your feet are forward, but not a huge deal. Now, you're not going to have a lot of aftermarket parts available for this bike because it's brand spanking new. This bike here, I think, has like 10 miles on it. Probably got like 13 now, but I'm very impressed with this bike. If I had to choose between this bike and the Fat Bob though, for me right now, this bike is like a luxury, right? It's like getting that sports car. It's a midlife crisis bike, if you will. But if you're gonna choose a bike, this bike's gonna turn heads. If you don't like this gigantic air cleaner on the side, or this air intake, you could definitely swap that out. But I'm very impressed with this bike all the way around. It's kind of a, right now, because people are still getting used to the way it looks, it's kind of a love it or hate it as far as the aesthetics go, but I'm impressed all the way around. I know I was leery, but the biggest thing I was leery about on this bike is the price. It starts at $21,000 and change, and there's not going to be a lot of wiggle room because of it's brand new. But it's an impressive machine. It's fun to ride. It's somewhat flickable. Again, the riding position's awkward, but if you've ridden a V-Rod, again, like I said already, it's very similar to that. But don't be intimidated by that fat rear tire. This bike does not want to stand back up. It's very good at leaning, and maybe that's because the front tire here is pretty wide as well. I'm not sure. I'm not going to try and explain the physics on it, but yeah, just a fun bike. And we're already coming to the end of the ride here, but if you were considering this bike and you've got the scratch, yeah, that's really confident in that turn, and you've got the scratch to just drop on this bike, I'm not gonna try and sway you to say no to this bike, because it's just a fun ride. And I would say it's very similar feel to the V-Rod as far as power and everything goes, except that you get an extra gear, and it's just there's a lot more power than the V-Rod. There's a big difference between the V-Rod and this bike. Alright guys, that's all I got for you. I'll have some impressions for you on our way back, but that is all I have for you right now. How was it? It was nice. So we hit every single green light, it seems like, on that test ride. My wife, when I got back, was saying how I was only gone for like 10 minutes, and that's about all it took for me to take that loop, which usually takes me about, I don't know, like 15 minutes at least. So it was nice though to be able to just kind of open it up on those residential roads where you'll have to stop a lot. And so in that sense it was nice, but I would have liked the test ride to have been longer because I didn't really get to say everything that I wanted to say. So I'm taking this opportunity to summarize my test ride. So what I didn't get to mention in the video at all was my height and my size in relation to the motorcycle. So I'm 5'6". I weigh about 180 pounds, and my inseam is about 29 inches, 30 inches. My arms are a little bit longer than the average person, I think. So you'll want to take that into consideration if you're thinking about going out and test ride this bike or to buy this bike. If you're a taller person, it's definitely going to fit you better because I think you won't have to lean so far forward to reach for the handlebars, which are the clip-on style. But all in all, I was very pleased with the motorcycle. I know that I was critical of the FXDR when I heard about its release. I wasn't in love with the exhaust. I wasn't in love with the fact that I wasn't in love with the fact that the passenger pad was going to be so uncomfortable and minimal, and I wasn't really happy with the air cleaner. But all those things aside, all of those things over the last, which has only been like a week and a half, have really grown on me. I've come to appreciate the functionality of all of those things, and if you don't like them, you can swap them out. And that's like, you always hear about the Harley tax. It's definitely one of those Harley tax things where, as nice as the exhaust sounds, I know people are going to be turned off by the way it looks. As the same thing with the functionality of the intake. You know, it's large, but it's not intrusive when you're riding. Just in case any of you are wondering about that. Of course, if you're a little bit taller, I think maybe, and your knee might extend a little bit further, that might be an issue. But again, that's just something that if you're really interested in buying this bike, you're going to want to go to the dealer and check it out. So do I take back all my criticism of this bike? No, because the biggest criticism that I had of this bike was the price, and I did mention that during the test ride. At $21,000 to start, I would much rather spend less money and get the Fat Bob. You know, performance considered, I will say that it definitely felt like a more powerful bike. It felt really confident in the turns, but again, my feet felt further forward because of how far forward I had to stretch for my hands and my arms. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where you're gonna have to go out and ride it yourself to find out. Don't take my word for it, because I'm just a guy and I'm just sharing my opinion. I also wanted to throw a big shout out to the guys out there at Yuba City Harley-Davidson who sat down with me and talked about the bike, talked about the functionality of some of the newer and odd parts that are on the FXDR, and also obviously thank you very much to Folsom Harley-Davidson for letting me come out and test ride the FXDR. It definitely is helping me make my decision on whether or not the Fat Bob will be my next bike. Obviously I have a Fat Bob right now. That really doesn't have a bearing though on my decision to move forward and purchase a 2018 or 19 Fat Bob. To me, it's just the best bike out of the bunch, and for the price, it is up there. But for me, it's much more worth it than what they're asking for the FXDR. So guys, if you like this video, go ahead and hit the thumbs up down there, which is the like button. And if you're so inclined, hit the subscribe button, which will pop up right over here. I'll also throw up some links over here in this direction, and you can go and check out one of my other videos right now. Guys, if you're out there riding, be safe. And if you're not riding, get riding. This is that one guy, and I am out.